Here we have two computers that are running macOS releases that are 10 versions apart. The one on the left is macOS 10.4 Tiger, and the one on the right is macOS 10.14 Mojave. Can you tell the difference between the two apart from the different default background? They both have a menu bar at the top and a dock with application icons on the bottom. They don't look that dissimilar over the hood, but under the hood I'm sure there are quite a few differences. So here is macOS 10.4 Tiger on this Lenovo ThinkPad T60. It's updated to the latest version, 10.4.11, and it doesn't work that badly, even though it's a horribly obsolete operating system in this year, 2019. I decided to install it because this computer is period appropriate for it, so a lot of stuff works quite well. Even the video acceleration works with the ATI graphics card that this computer has. The computer is recognized as an Apple development platform. It has an Intel Core 2 Duo T5600 at 1.3 GHz. It has 4 GB of RAM installed, but actually only 3 GB are usable, and macOS doesn't mention that. It has ATI Mobility Radeon X1300 graphics, and I was able to get Quartz Extreme video acceleration working. I'm not sure if it's because of the install disk I used, but it does come with a kernel extension file or kext file for ATI Radeon X1000 series graphics. And if you edit the information file of that driver and add this device ID on it, that driver will work with this computer. If we open a terminal and edit the kext file, which is in System, Library, Extensions, ATI Radeon X1000, then you go into Contents and info.plist. This is basically an XML file with the plist extension. You go down and find IO PCI match, and the row under it will show a series of device IDs. There will be more than one here, separated by a space. You delete all of them and keep the string tags. Between the string tags, you put the device ID of your graphics card. In my case, it's 0x7149, and then the vendor, which is 1002. You don't have to type 0x again. Then you press Ctrl X and Y to save, but I've already done this modification, so I'll do Ctrl X and N to discard the changes. And then you have to clear the kext cache. I wrote a little script because I was tired of typing the commands over and over again, because I had to do it again for other things. I saved it in a file called kextcache.sh, and it's these 4 commands. It applies the right permissions, and then it removes 2 cache files. And then you can restart and the video acceleration should work. For the sound, I had to install another driver. I think it's called Azalea Audio or something. I'll put a list of all the drivers I had to install. Ethernet works right out of the box, so let's see if it works now. That's just a cached preview, but now it's loading. And it's a bit slow, but it does work. So we can browse the internet on macOS 10 Tiger. The latest version of Safari that works is 4.1.3 from 2010, which is quite outdated. So I installed a special version of the 10.4 browser. It's based on Firefox, and it's actually designed for PowerPC computers. But I downloaded a special compiled version for Intel processors, so it runs as fast as possible. And a lot of websites work just fine here, even YouTube. It is quite slow, but it's still significantly faster than a PowerPC Mac. This computer has a 14-inch 1024 by 768 display, just like some Apple iBooks had. I can't set other resolutions, but this is the native resolution of this computer, so I don't have to do anything else. And I watched 8-Bit Guy's video about whether OS 10.4 Tiger is obsolete to see what programs he ran when he tried it out. But he didn't mention 10.4 Fox. I guess it didn't exist back then, I'm not sure. But we can try playing a YouTube video on it.
Today we're going to take a look at some vintage PC accessories, including the diskette holder styled to look like a CRT monitor from JHT Imports, the PC radio from Ashton.
It lags a little bit, but it's watchable, it's not too bad. I have the ad blocker turned on, so let's see how well it works without the ad blocker.
Today we're going to take a look at some vintage PC accessories, including the diskette holder styled to look like a CRT monitor from JHT Imports, the PC radio from Ashton Products, the anti-static brush from MediaMate, and the Tech Vac from Park Avenue. First is the CRT monitor styled diskette holder.
It was a bit slower, but it still worked. I also have no script to block some scripts, but YouTube is not blocked. I actually have some specific versions of these add-ons, let me check. No script is version 5.1.8.4 and uBlock Origin is 1.13.8. This is 10.4 Fox Feature Parity Release 2. It says copyright 2017, so it's probably a bit out of date, but if YouTube with its modern design can load, it's not that outdated. This computer has Intel Pro Wireless 3945 ABG, and there are actually drivers for macOS, but only for 10.5 Leopard, not for 10.4 Tiger, so I'm stuck with using Ethernet. I installed Microsoft Office 2004. You can run Office 2008, but I wanted to try an older version. So here it is loading, and just make a new Word document. And this is the last version to have the Office Assistant, and instead of the clippy paperclip, you have this classic Mac, whose name is Max. Doesn't make any sounds as far as I know. Let's try Excel. I've never opened this before. You might see some graphical glitches on the screen because of the video drivers, which don't work really well, but it's better than no video acceleration at all. And there you've got your spreadsheet. And let's see, PowerPoint. And there you go. Let's see the different styles. That's interesting. The Windows version doesn't have these styles. The equivalent of Office 2004 on Windows is Office 2003. And the assistant there is jumping around. And then there's the equivalent of Outlook, which is called Entourage. Of course, I haven't set it up, but works. There's an old style Mac wizard. Instead of back and next buttons, you have these little arrows. But I don't want to set it up now. Let's see the welcome email. I also installed iLife 06. You can install up to iLife 08, but I wanted to try something more similar to what a 2006 computer would have come with. So we've got iPhoto. I don't have any photos on there. Imovie HD, which I briefly tried with the macOS 10 Tiger welcome video. I didn't make that video with Imovie, I just put the video that was already made and added it to the timeline along with the music. So that also seems to work well enough. Let's see what version this is. 6.0.3. And iDVD, haven't made any DVDs with it, but the program is there. Then Garageband. We can browse the loops on it, or whatever they're called. Let's see, Garageband demo songs. Newer versions of these programs also have these demo songs. There was a longer list somewhere. Not here. I forgot where you look. It was something horizontal. Oh, there it is. Show loop browser. Here I have to select a category. Yeah, these are just sound effects. And there's a lot of stuff to choose from. And iWeb, which isn't that different from the newest version, which is like 3 point something. This one is 1.1.2. And I also put some folders for applications and documents. macOS X Tiger does not support stacks, which is like when you click on a folder on the dock, it will show a little list of the contents inside. It will just open the folder in the Finder. But you can hold the mouse button here on the icon and you will get the contents on a little menu here. Another program I installed but didn't put in the dock is Photoshop CS2. And this program is only for PowerPC, so now we can see the PowerPC emulator that older versions of macOS had. And macOS X Tiger on a PowerPC computer actually let you run macOS classic applications from even older Hackintosh's, but you can't run them on Intel even if you have Tiger. So here we have Photoshop CS2, and to prove that it's running on emulated PowerPC, you can see here system architecture PowerPC G4 with Altivec, whatever that is, and it thinks it's 10.4.9 when it's actually 10.4.11. I've also been able to print to my rather modern network printer with this OS. If we go here, I added my HP Color LaserJet Pro MFP, which means multifunction printer, M277DW, and this is over the network too. I wasn't able to use the scan features, but the print features did work. I didn't find a test page print function, so I just went to the terminal and typed uname-a, and this shows the kernel that this Hackintosh is using, 8.8.1. I just went to print it, and here it is. Printed perfectly. I also tried some games that were included in some Macs of the time, for example Marble Blast Gold. I actually bought this a few years ago, back when it was still available, and I used it on Windows. But I'm not really good at it.
Ready, set, go! Super jump.
And it works quite well with the track point of this computer. Another game that these old Macs came with is Nanosaur 2. But it makes this computer crash. So now I have to hold down the power button and start it up again. In the meantime, I'll show you what stacks look like on newer macOS versions. So here we have my newer ThinkPad on macOS Mojave, and here is the applications folder. This is what a macOS stack looks like. It's quite fancier, but it is available on Tiger too. And this is another way stacks can look like. And I remember when they first announced this feature on macOS 10 Leopard, it looks so cool. The animation when you open and close one. You can hold down Shift and it should do it slowly. It's not useful for anything, it just looks cool. If you hold down, it just opens the same thing, so it doesn't change anything. One pretty important thing that doesn't work in this computer, it actually did work when I first installed 10.4.8, but it stopped working after upgrading from 10.4.11, is anything connected to USB. So over here I have my Unicomp Model M keyboard. It's basically like the classic IBM Model M, but it's new production, and it connects via USB. So now I'm gonna connect it to this T60 running Tiger and try opening anything like Spotlight and try typing on it. You can hear the loud clicky buckling spring keys, but it doesn't type anything. If I press caps lock, the light doesn't turn on. So for some reason USB doesn't work. However, if we go to the system profiler and go to USB, you can see it does recognize the USB devices. I actually have this stuff plugged into a USB hub, but it's a powered USB hub. I have a Samsung flash drive, the keyboard, and also a USB mouse. It's actually a wireless mouse, but it has a USB receiver. And they don't work at all. I move the mouse, doesn't do anything on the computer. And the USB drive is not mounted. You can go to disk utility, and we can just see the internal hard drive. I tried looking up a solution for this problem. This problem actually occurred on some real Macs at the time with macOS 10.4.10, I believe. And they said to install the developer tools and run USB Prober. So I did that. They said just to run the program and then it should work. You can see it detects all the devices. But they still don't work. I tried downgrading the text files for USB. One is IO USB family and one is something else. IO USB something else. I tried the ones from 10.4.8 and 10.4.9. I extracted them using a program called Pacifist. This is an older version, 2.6.4, and it has this 15-second timer, but then it will work. I tried using different versions of these drivers, but they didn't change anything. Although the USB devices don't work when they are plugged in, while the computer is already turned on, they do work if you have them plugged in while the computer is starting up. If I start up the computer with the USB hub and those devices I showed earlier plugged in, they will work. However, as you can imagine, it is a bit of a hassle. Oh, and also there's iTunes. I could have shown that earlier. This is iTunes 9.2.1. If you go to the software update here, it will actually find updates for this computer, but it doesn't find updates for iTunes. It updated to iTunes 7, I think.
7, I think.
And if you want iTunes 8 or 9, you have to install them manually, but after that, they will work. Also, I was able to install drivers for power management, so we can see the battery percentage. If I unplug it now, that beep comes from the computer itself, but now it recognized that I unplugged it and it's gonna calculate how much time is remaining. Sleep mode doesn't work. If I try to put the computer to sleep now, it makes the screen black, but it's still on. And if I move the mouse, it just goes to the password screen. It obviously doesn't work as well as a real Mac. Another thing I should point out is that the fonts don't look that great at first. You have to go to the appearance settings and set the font smoothing style to medium. By default it's set for automatic, but it doesn't recognize this as a flat panel display, so it sets a low font smoothing, which is better for CRTs, but the medium setting looks a lot better. And another thing that makes this computer crash is virtual machines. I installed an old version of VirtualBox, and I'm not gonna start the virtual machine now, but if I do, it will be like Nanosaur, just crashes instantly with the kernel panic. Tried making a Windows XP virtual machine and I was about to install it, but this is actually an empty virtual machine. So I think that's it about a look at this horribly obsolete macOS version, but it was quite important. It was the first macOS version to run on Intel processors, and when they first did those hacks to run macOS versions on non-Apple computers, which back then was commonly known as OS X86, this was a really good computer for it. So there we have it. Thank you for watching. Oh screw it, just shut it down now.